And we're live here on WCEG Talk Radio, WCEG Network on the People's Choice. And I'm your host, Joe Flint, all one word, like a tribe called Quest. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to come before you this evening. As always, I miss you each and every time I'm away, but I'm glad to be back before you again this evening to discuss the matters at hand, our local and state government, and the importance, if you will, of exercising your right to vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you really recognize the fact, we have a million commercials that are going on every day back behind us. Every time you turn on television, if you watch regular TV, unlike me, I watch a lot of streaming networks now. But if you're watching regular television or watching the news, in between every news segment, there is a there's a political commercial, and these commercials are trying to sway you one way or the other for either candidate. Well, I want to talk this evening from the federal house to the state house, how things are happening on the front line of our nation's capital, and what is taking place here in the great state of Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen a lot of things that have been transpiring here lately, and many of them, have been good and some bad, but many of them have caught my attention, and specifically that of the 2024 presidential election. We're now in the midterm. We're in the midterm area of federal elections, but as far as the president is concerned, uh, his re-election campaign, if you will, is really starting about now. Generally, a sitting president will have already made up his mind this late in the year, really with less than 2 years, on the campaign trail now, to decide whether or not he or she, but in this case, he would be running again for reelection. However, Joe Biden has said that President Biden, excuse me, has said that he has not made up his mind that he will run again for president. Now, that is concerning to me, to the party as a whole, because if there is no current front runner, then who will they use to be the candidate come 2024? And what I've read in reading many articles and going back and forth, between news affiliates, I've discovered that oddly enough, there are 72% of Americans said they do not want President Biden to run again in 2024. And that is amazing to me. Now, again, I don't know who is doing these polls. I don't know. Well, it says the Marquette Law School is who submitted this particular poll, but I don't know who they are polling is the statement I should make. I'm not sure who they're talking to, specifically who they're calling, but according to this poll, 72% of Americans have said that they do not want President Biden to run again in 2024. And according to this poll that was released just on this past Thursday, a striking number, especially when considering Biden's approval rating, is about relatively solid for him at 45%. So his approval rating is still about 50% of America, well, technically 45%, but it's still about half of Americans actually have a great approval. Every American. But then while the Republicans themselves are surprisingly keen on Biden bowing out, 88% of them don't want him to run again as well. Many of them are saying that he don't want him to run for office again at all. So that's 88% of Republicans, but that's not surprising because they don't care for him to be in office anyway. So to the independents, now there are also independents. 79% of independents don't want him to run again. So the question, I'm wondering, what is wrong with Joe Biden? What is wrong that he has not made a commitment to running again for the party? But also, what's wrong with the American people who, with more than 70% across the board, are saying, really close to 80% of American people, when you count in the Democrats, Republicans, and the independents, that's about an 80% or 75% percentage of individuals who do not want him to seek re-election come 2024. So the question is, what's wrong? What don't they like about him? What are they missing? Do they not think that he's capable of moving forward? Are they not pleased with the current politics that he's been doing? What is the problem? The poll, brothers and sisters, had been conducted over the summer with CNN. It's not, excuse me, immediately clear why so many people in the poll leaned against Biden's re-election bid, since the pollsters didn't ask that question specifically. But the past poll suggested that Biden's advanced age is the issue. He is currently 79 years of age and will turn 82 shortly after the 2024 election. So the question is, at 82 in 2024, will he be able to have the same steam and same push and same movement that he has now to go forward? That is where people are basing their concern is on his age. At 79 years of age, as a matter of fact, when he was elected, he was the oldest president to be elected to office at the time. Witnesses from the House asked Nancy Pelosi on Thursday, when asked by CNN, if he should run again, and President Biden, or if he should step aside. And Nancy's response was, President Biden is the president of the United States. He did a great service to our country. He defeated President Trump. Let's not forget that. I'm not going into politics about whether or not the president should run again. So even Nancy Pelosi did not give a solid answer of whether or not he should run again for president. So there's a lot up in arms. So what does this mean? This means that the party does not have a viable candidate in 2024, which on the other side means that the Republican Party can, do a lot of work behind the scenes of finding someone who is if you will, a young top gun to come out and press for the 2024 election. And there's a conversation or concern whether or not President Trump will get back into the election in 2024. And I don't see that happening. As a matter of fact, I don't think the Republican Party will use him in that spectrum. Now, they don't mind at all having him to serve as, or they don't mind at all having him to be a what do you call it, a supporter writing checks, but they do not want him to serve on that national level again because of the embarrassment that he provided to the party. Had he not continued on his rhetoric on a day-to-day basis, people probably wouldn't have been so upset with him. Even the party themselves were a little distant from him as time went on. So the question again is, should President Biden, move forward in running for re-election? But the answer is that President Biden hasn't even made up his mind. So who does that leave? Then that leaves our current Vice President Kamala Harris, to step up. And I don't know that she is gearing up for a campaign. In truth, it does not seem like there's any candidate on the Democratic national scale who is gearing up to run for political office for the presidency come 2024. And that is a concern for the Democratic Party. And that is a real issue. But now, what I did read when I went to another news outlet, which is The Hill, I discovered that there are currently 7 Democrats who will most likely run if President Biden bows out. 7 of them. Of course, we know that Kamala Harris is one of the ones who will join in the race because she's the current sitting vice president of the United States. And she is likely to be running for office. And in doing so, I don't know that she is a she, but at that point, that makes it easier for the party to get behind her because she is the current vice president. So Kamala Harris is the #1 person. When it comes next to Kamala, the next person would be Pete Buttigieg. They brought him back out and saying it's possible for them for office, which is interesting to me. Can you, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're seeming to have some technical difficulties. Are you able to hear me? Just a moment. And again, we're live on WCEG Network on the People's Choice here on WCEG Talk Radio. And ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize for the delay as we were having some internet connections. I don't know what happens. It's only when I get to talking about these political things like this, does the internet always seem to mess up on me. There's something going on with that. I guess they don't like my commentary. But as I was saying, there are 7 candidates who are likely to run if President Biden should bow out in the 2024 election. That first being of Kamala Harris, the second being of Pete Buttigieg. And actually, believe it or not, Governor Gretchen Whitmire is one of the candidates who would consider. She's, Michigan's first, she's the first in Michigan ever who came close than many realized to being Biden's pick. He actually at some point was going to use her as a vice presidential pick. But now Whitmire, who is 51, is catching the eyes of Democrats as she runs for re-election. And some people are considering her to run for the national office or the highest office in the land, that being the president of the United States. Governor Gavin Newsom is considered a top pick from the great state of Florida, if I remember correct. He's from Florida, and he is one of the candidates. So that's 4 of them thus far. We have Kamala Harris, we have Pete Buttigieg, we have Gretchen Whitmire, and then we have Newsom, who is the current governor. I'm sorry, not Florida, my apologies. He is the governor of California, excuse me. I don't want anybody to get back at me. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, another person who's no spring chicken herself has been considered on the list of top 7 to run, and that is Elizabeth Warren. Now, here's my thing with Liz. I like Elizabeth Warren. I think that she is a very open-minded individual, but I think Liz's time has passed. And the other part is Liz is, she's an aging person as well. And so I don't see it behooving the party, the Democratic Party at all, to choose someone who is in their mid 70s or late 70s. As a matter of fact, I think she's about 73 or 74 years of age. And then, of course, we got my Uncle Bernie. Uncle Bernie, again, has been considered as one of the candidates, but Bernie himself is 81 years of age at this present moment. So Bernie would not be a good, viable candidate to run for president at 81. And then we have the one that everybody seems to hate, AOC, Representative Alexandria Cortez out of New York. Some people believe that she has enough steam, enough push, enough backing that if she decided to get on the scene, that she could possibly forge her way. Now, what I could see, now I don't know how this would go over with the American people because we do live in America, and I do know that the trend of our politics a lot better than most people that think so. But I can tell you right now that a powerhouse for the Democratic Party would be that of Kamala Harris and Representative AOC all at the same time. But they are not able to actually do that together. That wouldn't work for them. But those together would be a powerhouse, but having them would also cause a lot of controversy because you would have a female president and vice president. And I think that would just cause one heck of an uproar. I don't think our country is far from that, but I just know that they're not ready for that at the time. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is the concern right now. President Biden's age, if he should actually run again, President Biden himself has not made any true statement whether or not he will move forward in his election campaign. And then lastly, there are a lot of candidates, there are 7, if you will, individuals who have been considered possible or valuable candidates to run for the presidency in 2024 if in fact President Biden decides to bow out. And so we should keep a close watch on that as it is concerning to see that a sitting president would not decide to seek his party's nomination again. I believe The last time that has happened would be Gerald Ford, would be the last president who decided not to seek his party's re-election again. And prior to that, I want to say, uh, I don't think that, well, I think Theodore Roosevelt might have been one who decided, because he came back after a term and decided to run again for a third time, but he had served 2 terms previously. And then if my mind can go back a little further, I think the only other president that ever decided that he was not going to run again was that of our first president, our founding president, that of George Washington, who had stated, and I'm paraphrasing, but he would not serve more than the time in which he had spent there in the office of presidency. And let it be known, ladies and gentlemen, that there was, with George Washington, there was no term limits. It just became kind of known after he had served the time in which he did, that presidents would serve 2 terms or attempt to serve 2 terms. That's why it became so popular to serve, 2 terms. And then when it came to my favorite president, that of FDR, we discovered that Franklin Roosevelt actually was elected 4 times to the presidency, but he did not get a chance to serve out his 4th term, as he had died in office. So again, we're going to keep our eyes very closely watched on the Democratic Party as they progress into deciding what is going to happen in 2024. But again, we're at the end of 2022 now. And we're in the home stretch. We are now in October. There are 2 months left, and generally the sitting president will already have established or put forward his election, or his election committee in order to get his campaign going. So we'll see. We're in midterm elections, and that should be very interesting. I guess just maybe, and I'll move forward into the next segment, but just maybe he's waiting to see what the midterms will turn out for him in the coming, next month. Currently, there are, I want to say, there are 30 something Senate seats up for re-election right now. And that's out of 50. Each state only has 50 of them. And I want to say that there are about 30 Senate seats that are up for re-election right now. I did have this information up. I lost it there a little while ago. But if in fact that is true, then that could definitely make the difference in whether or not the president would seek re-election, because if he has the backing, the support he needs after the midterm election, then that probably means that he will be able to swing and win the 2024 campaign. But who knows? Everything in the U.S. now is all relative. It just happens by whim. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to move over to the great state of Georgia. This place that we call home, Georgia, sweet Georgia, is on my mind. The Peach State, a place that everybody seems to love. And Georgia has now become a swing state, if you will. It is a top state. It's the one that everybody is paying attention to in this midterm election. This is a state that everybody's been paying attention to since the previous presidential election. And now there are 2 key races that are taking place here in the state of Georgia. That of the U.S. Senate race between incumbent Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. And then there's the gubernatorial race between, incumbent Brian Kemp and former tax attorney, former state representative Stacey Abrams. Now, I read a story recently about her that I did not know. Is that when Stacey was, I believe, a high school senior, she and all of the high school seniors across the school boards in Georgia at the time, there were 180, all the high school valedictorians, and I want to say maybe salutatorians, but it's been the valedictorians or both, were invited to the governor's mansion that year for just for a banquet type thing. And according to the story, Stacey her family did not have a car. And so they rode the bus from where they lived up to the governor's mansion. If you've ever been up that way, West Paces Ferry, road, you will see. And I was trying to think to myself after I read the story, where's the bus stop over there? I can't even say that I've ever seen the bus go down that road. Of course, probably then it did in the, in the 90s, but I don't recall that it did at the time. But anyway, because I never rode the bus up there during that time. But her and her parents, her mother and father, rode the bus to the governor's mansion, got off the bus and walked over to the mansion. And the guard that was at the door noticed, I don't know if you know, but every guard at the governor's mansion is a state trooper, unless they have some other, set guard there. But said that the guard told her father that this was a closed private party, and that, that you had to be invited. And the story goes on to say that they explained that, that daughter Stacy was on the list, and they discovered that she was the second person on the list, as a matter of fact. But in her story, she says that the guard grudgingly, let them into the gate to attend the party. And Stacy goes on to say that she does not, the day was not what she expected it to be. She says the only thing that plays over in her mind over and over again is the fact not meeting the governor, not the fact that she was the second person on the list, not the fact that she was at the governor's mansion, not the fact that she was able to, speak with like-minded, students who were, of her same age and gender and so on and so forth. But the thing that stood out to her the most is that she was, if you will, profiled at the gates trying to get into the governor's mansion because they rode the bus there and did not drive like everybody else. Now, I never knew that story, but I read that story recently, and I found that very interesting. And I wondered to myself if that is what gave her, and is what's giving her such passion to run and push for becoming governor of Georgia. Now, there's no doubt to me that that has definitely fueled her in life about change and about stereotypes. But I wonder if that is what has given her the passion and the push to run for governor, because it's extremely odd to see. I never knew that story, so that's something to definitely have you wanting to move forward. Now, real quick, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to know that this week, as a matter of fact, I think, or Monday, I believe it is, October 11th is the last day, or that may be Tuesday, next Tuesday, that you can actually register to vote for the midterm elections, October 11th. Early voting starts on October 17th. The midterm election is November 8th. Let me say this again. If you are not registered to vote, you have until next Tuesday, October 11th, to register in order for you to vote in the midterm election, which is November 8th. Early voting here in the state of Georgia will take place come October 17th. October 17th. So in knowing this, we have incumbent Governor Brian Kemp, and we have Stacey Abrams, who is adamant that she will be the next governor of the state of Georgia. I was privy not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, to attend a banquet to honor both Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams. And in her speech, she talked about the injustices that have taken place in the state of Georgia, the disenfranchisements, and she made known that she would like her keys to the second floor office in the state capitol. I can honestly tell you that she was fired up and ready to go in that meeting. And so the question is, can she pull it off? Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, there is still some polls out there that is showing that she is a little behind Kemp, and that Kemp is leading in the polls. But Stacey says that she is not concerned and that her math is far better than the math of the pollsters. As a matter of fact, she says that she was a tax attorney a long time, and so she knows how polls and math works. But she is not at all concerned about her abilities to win. The poll consistently shows that the 48-year-old Democratic candidate is trailing, behind Governor Kemp, now a relatively popular governor with the advantage of incumbency. So I think I've said this before, and this was before I was knowledgeable enough about political candidates and reading them and not focusing on the party. So when I was a young voter, when I was 18, I was 20, I would just look at the party, and I would honestly say I would just vote party lines, but I don't believe in that anymore. And I think that you all who know me know this. I don't believe in voting just party lines. But I would always vote for the incumbent because I said, hey, he or she is already in the office. So, apparently they've done something to get there, not realizing that, that was a bad thing to do. But I mentioned that because in this article, it highlights that's one of Governor Kemp's biggest attributes right now, is that he is the incumbent governor of Georgia. So what that means is that people have seen your work. They know what you're capable of. They know what you aren't capable of. They know what you will push. They know the agendas that you will go for, and they are willing to just keep going with you based on what they have seen. However, the problem with that is they've also seen what you haven't done, and they may question things about you moving forward because you have not always proven yourself to be that. So in the polls currently, it shows that Stacey Abrams well, Governor Kemp is at 40% in the polls, and that Abrams is at 42%. And while Abrams has strong support among her base, then Kemp, according to a Monmouth University survey, it concluded that her path to victory was much narrower. But Abrams, again, as I said to you, is refusing to be counted out. Her words, she says that I'm a Yale-educated tax attorney. She says her trust is that her math is better than the polls. In the fast-growing and diversifying battleground state, she notes that as many as 1.6 million new voters have been added to the rolls since 2018. Many times, Kemp's margin of victory affected that in the past times. She goes on to say that every success I've had in politics has been about building the electorate I need. Building the electorate we have showed, which is an electorate that's much more relative or reflective in the state, Abrams said during the interview at a coffee shop in Atlanta. So Stacey Abrams is basing her win, basing her ability to come out on top of this as simply in the contents of her math is better than anything else. But Governor Kemp has done a lot of things when it comes to attempting to, if you will, gain the voters, gain the potential, gain the individual's votes. Governor Kemp has been sending out some money to underprivileged families. I think it was recently $350 that he had sent to individuals who have TANF and food stamps and SNAP and all the other stuff there. And in addition to he repealed or took back the need to have a background, what is it, a license to carry here in the state of Georgia. In addition to some other funds that he had given, I think it was early this year or last year, as an incentive to taxpayers. So he's been doing a lot of things in order to make his name in favor or make people to look at him favorably. And the truth of the matter is, as some people may think these are low-balling efforts, you have to know that candidates will do any and everything they can in order to get individuals to vote for them. And when I tell you that Brian Kemp has done all he can over the past year, pushing forward to get your attention and to get your vote, he is nonstop. And I have to be the first to tell you, I have not seen in my lifetime of paying attention to politics any Republican governor who would find a way to give something more to, and I hate to use the phrase, but welfare individuals. Because let's be honest, most, Republican governors are not a big supporter of the welfare programs. As a matter of fact, they believe that the government is too big in and of itself. And so they don't think that the government should be dishing out or sending out any more money to anybody. And some of them have this thought process to believe that those on welfare are abusing the system and that they should not be given anything more based on their lack thereof, their lack of a job, their lack of this, and so on and so forth. And so Governor Kemp has, he's come out of that circle, but in my opinion, I think he's doing it for the sake of political power. Ladies and gentlemen, Georgia is nearly evenly divided between the parties. Ever since the 2020 election, Georgia has been, well, even before that, Georgia had become a battleground state. But very much so since the 2020 election, Georgia has been a middle of the road place. And it's kind of one of those things we're playing tug of war here in the state. And we're waiting for that tie that's in between the rope to either pull one a little more this way or to pull a little more that way. And there's a lot of, believe it or not, there's a lot of hatred and anger going on because not in Georgia's history, in God knows how long has Georgia had two, and I'm trying to think in my mind, in my years of living, if such, well, I know such has not happened, I think in my years of living, but to have two Democratic senators. And so to have two Democrat senators and then have a Democratic governor, oh my God, that would make Georgia no longer blurple, but completely blue. And so Georgia is battling, and Abrams and Kemp embody, they are dueling. They are Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. They are dueling with each other back and forth concerning this particular race. And this is not her first time against him. This is her going against him for a second time. So she knows her opponent, and like her, he knows her, and they know how each other campaigns and how they push forward to these races. So this should be very, very interesting. And we have a month's time to see how this plays out. Abrams, again, who's a former House minority leader and prominent voting rights advocate, is working to mobilize the Black, Latino, Asian American voters, along with young people in Atlanta and its sprawling suburbs, while Kemp, a stout conservative who easily defeated a Trump-backed primary challenger earlier this year, draws overwhelming support from white voters in the rural and exurban parts of the state. So what has really been an issue here in Georgia, and we're going to move this in just a second, is the fact that we have, especially around the metro area, a lot of hospitals closing down. And I could be wrong, and I meant to search for this again. But if I recall, when Governor Kemp was running for office to begin with in the beginning, he mentioned about making sure that rural parts of Georgia had more emergency, more hospitals and things of that nature in South Georgia, and they didn't have enough. But I have not seen or heard that South Georgia has gained any more hospitals. And so for them to close down some, in the little outskirts of Metro Atlanta, makes it an even further challenge for those who are in South Georgia to find a hospital close to them. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this the other day because last Sunday I had to go to the emergency room myself. But when you get beyond Clayton County or beyond the airport, so in Clayton County, Georgia, you have Southern Regional. But when you get beyond that, from Clayton County, the next hospital, and I believe it's a Piedmont, is in Stockbridge. But then when you leave Stockbridge, I can't think of another medical center that's in another maybe 30-mile basis from Stockbridge anywhere else. Now, to the left or right of Stockbridge, you could probably go to maybe Fayetteville or in areas like that. But if you go further south, is what I'm saying, there aren't any. And then if you're on the 85 corridor going down 85, between the airport all the way to Noonan, there's not a hospital until you get to Noonan. And that is a Piedmont hospital. And then from Noonan further south, I don't believe that I have seen, and I travel that way a lot going to Columbus, I don't know that there's another hospital beyond Noonan, maybe in LaGrange. Maybe LaGrange is the next one beyond that. So the point that I'm making behind that is that, the further you live, the harder it is for you to get medical attention. And if I remember correctly, Governor Kemp talked about his ability to be able to add more hospitals to the rural areas of Georgia. But we're seeing now that Georgia is losing some of its hospitals currently and that's becoming a bigger issue for our state. Ladies and gentlemen, let me get to this. So that's in our state office, but in our state federal office, we have Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. Raphael Warnock is currently ahead of Herschel Walker, and he is ahead of him, I think, about maybe 56% of the vote, whereas Herschel Walker is at like 44% of the vote. I'm just going to be very candid here behind this. Herschel Walker is not fit for this role. These are the views of Joe Flint and not WCEG Network. These are the views of the host of the People's Choice and not WCEG Network. Herschel Walker does not have the capacity to understand back and forth the laws that are being legislated in our state house. He does not have the knowledge that is needed to move forward in doing so. And for me, that is a problem. People know that I have not always been a fan of Raphael Warnock. I have never made that a secret. But there takes a level of knowledge and focus and education to do this role. And I can't say to you enough that Herschel Walker does not have either of those. Now, I'm not saying that the man is dumb. I'm not saying that he is not educated at all. But what I am saying is that nothing about him, nothing about his pedigree, nothing about his current status gives him the ability to serve, gives him give me the courage that he could serve well. And so I say that to say this: many who are voting for him are voting for him specifically because he is a Republican and not because he is a viable candidate. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the worst thing that you can do as a citizen, to vote for somebody basically because of your political background. I'm going to tell you this, and I mean this with all of my heart. Voting based on your political background will get you disappointed far more than you've ever discovered in your life. Because going to get your party, you'll discover that your party's agenda doesn't always match yours. So what you need to look at is the individual and decide whether or not he or she is out of your vote. That's the thing. But after that, don't allow. Still there. Every time.
You're listening to The People's Choice. We're having a little technical difficulty. If my host can hear me, please log out and back in again. You're listening to WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. We're in the midterm elections. Our host, Joe Flint of The People's Choice, having a few difficulties. He went out. Hopefully he'll be back in momentarily. So just bear with. We are going to remind you of your dates again coming up for October 11th. Is the last day to register to vote to vote in the midterm elections. We also have early voting beginning on October 17th, and the midterm elections is on November 8th. We would like to again remind you that the midterm local and state elections are very important. Our lives do depend on it. We're going to take a station break momentarily, and you're listening to The People's Choice. I am not Joe Flint. I am Penny Rogers, and we will like to make sure that you all are able to get the important dates that are going to be coming upon us starting next Tuesday, midterm elections. To register to vote in the midterm elections, October 11th is the last date. Also, early voting begins on October 17th. Please call your local county voting office to find out when your Saturday and Sunday voting will take place and where. And you can always log on to www.sos.ga.gov, and you can find that information regarding your voting locations to make sure you're still on the roll. Anything that you need to do, My Voter Place, make sure that you can check those entities out so that we can be able to know where to go and vote. There has been changes in the provisional ballots on election day. If you were in the wrong location or there was a problem with your voter registration, you could always ask for a provisional paper ballot. Now you would have to wait until after 5 o'clock in order for the provisional ballot to be able to be utilized. So please be aware of those changes that are taking place. And you can always go to www.sos.ga.gov in order to know the different polling voting locations. If you're still on the roll, to check your voting precinct and some other pertinent information that you would need to know. www.sos.ga.gov, and you can click on My Voter information once you go to that website. So again, we're having a few technical difficulties on the People's Choice. Joe Flint was giving us, oh, he's coming back in now. But as we were originally saying, www.sos.ga.gov is the entity where you can check your polling place. You're able to check your voter status. You will be able to find out any information that you would need. And you can also call your local county voting office to find out about Saturday voting. Okay, so Joe Flynn is back. If he would unmute himself, we will let him take the reins again. Thank you so much for bearing with us through our technical difficulties. Joe, it's on you.
I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I'm terribly sorry about that. I swear, every time I get on here to discuss these political issues, they're always trying to find a way to get rid of me. They don't want me to talk about it. But ladies and gentlemen, we were talking about Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, and the concern, and what I was saying to you before we were so rudely interrupted and everything just blanked out there, is the fact that we have got to, as an educated society, because we're far more educated than our foreparents were. And if not because you went to school to get higher degrees, but because so much information is accessible right here on your phone. So you can read something, an article, or read about something a lot faster than, you had to, than the information that you got, growing up. For my generation, Google was encyclopedias. And so we used to have to read those, but now, I can just think of something and type it in my phone. But I say all that to say that we have the ability to type in an individual's name, a candidate's name, and to research them. Now, of course, there's going to be information on there that they want you to read, but you can find other articles about these people and so many other things concerning them. And to know what they believe in and what they focus on. And again, my purpose behind this is, I get it. There are some people who are going to say, oh, you have to vote, Democrat, because if you don't vote Democrat, then we're going to get, this group of people into the office and they're not going to take care of us. Or you got to vote Republican, because if you don't vote Republican, that group of people are going to get into the office and they're going to, give away the farm and so on and so forth. I need you to be an educated voter, and that you take the time to research a candidate and see if he or she is really worthwhile. Because the truth of the matter is, the agenda trumps everything else that is going on. The party's agenda, ladies and gentlemen, trumps everything else over what the candidate may or may not have run on. And so it's important to ensure that you find a candidate who, as best as possible, can stay on message and on target for what they're doing. So I saw an interview the other day, or not an interview, but a commercial the other day of Herschel Walker. And apparently he had beat his wife or done something to her. And, I found that very interesting because, of course, they did the same thing to Raphael Warnock when he was running for office and the issues that he had with he and his, I guess, ex-wife. Um, and so, both parties are throwing, dirt and mess back and forth with each other. And now, let me be clear, I don't condone any of that or any of those issues, but none of that has anything to do with their ability to be able to do their job. Again, I'm not saying that either of those issues are okay, but their ability to do their job is far more important to me. Everybody in their home has some issues. I don't care who you are. I don't care how holy or unholy you are. Everybody has some type of issues in their home, some dysfunction, in their home. And it's just that most of us, because we aren't running for office, it never comes to light. But if we were running for office, so many things would come up. I have friends that always say to me, Joe, I would never move to Georgia and run for office in Georgia because they throw everything. They bring the kitchen sink up all the time. And that's right. There are two types of people in the world, the caught and the uncaught. And we experience them every day of our lives. But ladies and gentlemen, when we consider this individual for the U.S. Senate, it is very important that we consider someone who is going to be able to move Georgia and our nation, because understand this, the senators represent your state, but most of their votes are for the nation. And in those bills and laws that they create, there is funding that channels down to your state. And there may be some specific ones that are specific to your state. But generally, each of our elected senators and or representatives, U.S. representatives, are all voting for the things that our nation needs. And in these bills, they call it pork. They add some other things that say, hey, we're going to get this road built, for, whatever this highway is, but some way, somehow. And Raphael Warnock I can't remember what the road was, but he talked about this in his speech at the banquet the other night, how this particular road will help some of the infrastructure here in Georgia. That's why he was able to vote for it and co-sign, if you will, with it for another. And I want to say it was Ted Cruz, I believe. And I could be wrong. I can't remember who he said, but I think he said Ted Cruz. But it was there. He explained, and I really did appreciate this because, again, most people don't acknowledge this, is that, yes, they go to work for your state, but in working for your state, they have to bargain and barter with others to get funding for our states. So I say all that to say, I just don't think that Herschel Walker understands how that works. And Raphael Warnock might not have known it prior to going there, but he was or is an extremely knowledgeable and well-educated man, and understands how this role works. And so we are at a stand. We're at a, what's the word I want to use? We're at a crossroad here in Georgia when it comes to our election, and we're at a crossroad in our nation when it comes to our election, because we have individuals who are sorry about that, guys. I'm telling you, every time these individuals have a great responsibility of your life and the lives of your children, because just like in the National House, every bill or every law that is passed does not always immediately affect the generation that is witnessing it. Most often it affects the generation that is to follow. And so when we make the statements of we want to leave an America better for our children and grandchildren, we need to really consider that when we are electing and sending individuals to work for us in Congress. or in the state house, because these individuals are making laws and decisions that will greatly affect how our lives as seniors, how our lives as grandparents, and possibly even great grandparents will be, and how the children to follow us will be able to live in a greater or safer America. And I want to say this as we get ready to come to the end of the segment here. There are, if I remember, and I was reading, there were three main focuses that Georgia voters are concerned about. One is education. It is back on the ballot, if you will. And I say that in the context of Georgia voters, the ballot meaning our elected officials, what they're going to do about it. Education was one of the number one things that voters, when polled, were asked about for Georgia. The second thing was, can you guess it? Abortion laws. It is back. It is, it is, I was surprised it wasn't number one, but it is at the forefront of every state's election during this time, because as we know, the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade over this summer, I believe it was. And in doing so, it took away, a lot of women's rights and their ability to effectively get done what they deem is necessary, whatever the cause or the reason is. But it took away the rights. And so that meant that states now have full jurisdiction to decide whether or not a woman can. And with that being said, states are imposing greater and higher penalties for women who will have an abortion. And I'm gonna say this about abortion and I'll move forward. It's amazing to me that the same group of individuals who are so adamant about abortion, not happening, are the same group of individuals who will not pass gun control laws to combat the killing of young men and women in our schools across the nation. So I say that to say this: I feel like they want children to be born so that they can eventually be killed. That's just my thought process. Don't take my word for it, but that's just how I feel about it. And the other thing was taxes here in the state of Georgia. A lot of people are concerned about the taxes in the state, although Georgia has not had really any big tax hikes here lately. But there's a concern for Georgia taxes as money is being spent. Now, Georgia has been very blessed, ladies and gentlemen, and that Georgia has always, for I want to say at least the past 10 or 12 years, had a surplus in our government. So Georgia's been very blessed, which is why Governor Kemp has been able to give out some money, because we have some to do so. And so Georgia does very well at maintaining its budget. But there's a concern with the influx of people moving to the state and how it is hiking up our taxes. And yes, and Medicare has become a bigger issue as well. But healthcare as a whole is a bigger issue as well, because we have a generation, if you will. Baby boomers, I want to say, stopped around 1965, I guess, was the end of baby boomers. But even those individuals now who were born in 65, are approaching, 60 years of age or senior citizen, mode. And it's a lot. There are still a lot of baby boomers. I mean, a lot of baby boomers out there. And so, as more are getting into that age of approaching 60 and 65, and even 70 years of age, their health care is becoming more, their health, needless to say, is becoming more important, and the health care is becoming a priority for them even more. And so these have been, some of the things that have been being brought to the forefront in the state of Georgia. And something else that just came across the screen was social security. I couldn't say it because about it earlier, we're saying social, social security. Now, since I've been a child, I have heard that Social Security was going away. And I don't see that ever happening. But what I do believe is an issue is that the formula needs to be adjusted.
because people will have worked their entire lives and have made, work jobs making, $60,000, $70,000 a year. And then, the Social Security benefit they end up with about, $15,000 to $2,000 a month they're not able to live on that. And it is driving more people away from their homes. And it is driving more people to have to live in senior high rises where they're depicting your rent based on the amount of money that you get from Social Security. So it's concerning. And we have a lot of things that need to be addressed. And I say all that because those individuals who we send and elect each and every year to serve us, or every 2 years, or every 4 years, whichever year they're running, have a big say in how this money is distributed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the very bottom of the hour, and I want to again apologize for the delay and the hiccups there in the setting. I swear, I don't know if it's just me, but I think that they have a problem with my commentary when it comes to speaking about individuals and candidates. Listen, October 11th is the last day that you can register to vote for the upcoming November election. October 11th, that is next Tuesday, count it, next Tuesday. That is 8 days away, or 7 days, if you're no longer counting today. That is 7 days away that you can register and vote in the upcoming midterm election. Now, October 17th is the early voting that will take place here in the state of Georgia. If you are like me and you want to get out there and exercise that vote and just be done with it, by all means, jump right ahead to do that. That means that there are less issues at the voting poll on election day. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, election day is November 8th. Please get out here and exercise your right to vote. If you have any questions, go to the Secretary of State's website, which is sos.ga.gov, to check your voter registration information. It is very important that you do that so that you can know whether or not you've been purged from the election polls. Make sure you exercise your right to vote. Take your children, if you have, teenagers, even young children, to show them the importance and why we should do it. Don't just take them and vote and leave, but have a conversation with them about it so that they could provide good feedback. And you can provide them good feedback. And I'll say this and I'll end the segment. My oldest daughter was able to vote for the first time last year, I believe it was. Yeah. And she made the statement when she voted. A reporter interviewed her, and her statement was she felt taller when she voted, and that made my day. And it wasn't because she had just decided, I wanted to vote. She had an example. I showed my children on a regular basis the importance of voting. And I still do to this day. But ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the very bottom of the hour. Provisional ballots are available after 5 p.m. Provisional ballots are available after 5 p.m. Make sure that you take the opportunity to get a provisional ballot. Make sure you get a provisional ballot so that you can do so. But they're available after 5 p.m. on voting day. Provisional ballots are available after 5 p.m. on voting day. Thank you so much for joining us here on the People's Choice on WCEG Network. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties there, but we thank you for staying with us and listening to us. Yeah, we thank you for joining us, and we hope that we have said something and done something that will encourage you to get out and exercise your right to vote. I hope that the information was informative, and I hope that you feel a little taller with what was provided. Thank you for joining the People's Choice. I'm your host, Joe Flint Alwyn. We're like a tribe called Quest. Good night.